Have you ever looked into a woman's eyes and felt something you could not name? Not love, not tenderness, not even desire in the usual sense, but something older, stranger, almost dangerous. A spark that drew you in and unsettled you at the same time. Sigmund Freud recognized that look, not from reading theories in books, but from listening to the confessions of women in his consulting room, behind the heavy curtains of Vienna. Away from polite conversation, he was confronted with truths that most men would rather not hear. What he found did not horrify him because it was wicked. It horrified him because it was real. Freud began his work as a man of science. He believed in reason, in logic, in medicine. But when women came to him, often respected wives and mothers from the upper classes, what they revealed could not be explained by reason alone. They spoke in fragments, with trembling hands and burning eyes. They came to him with what doctors called hysteria, seizures, fainting, paralysis, sudden laughter or tears on the surface. These symptoms seemed like weakness, but Freud saw something deeper. Their bodies were not broken. They were speaking a truth their minds dared not utter. One of his first cases was Anna von L., a wealthy Viennese woman with every advantage life could provide. Outwardly, she was composed, cultured, admired. Inwardly, she was collapsing. Doctors at the time could offer no answers. They said female hysteria, which was little more than a polite label for their ignorance. But Freud listened, and what Anna revealed shattered his view of human nature. She did not long for healing, peace, or even love in the way society imagined. What she confessed, between sobs and moments of paralysis, was that she dreamed of being overpowered, not caressed, not adored, but claimed, dominated, consumed by a presence stronger than her own. These were not memories. They were desires. Shameful, terrifying, and yet undeniable. Freud realized she was not alone. After Anna came Dora, Cecilia, and many more. Women wrapped in respectability, masks of virtue and gentleness, who carried within them secret longings that defied everything they were told to want. They desired polarity, conflict, surrender, danger, and the more society demanded purity, the more violently the unconscious rebelled. Civilization had forced them into cages, and desire was clawing to escape. Freud began to see hysteria not as illness, but as repression breaking through the cracks. This was a truth no one wanted exposed. He tried to publish his findings, but his peers ridiculed him. They branded him obscene, indecent, even insane. Because if Freud was right, then the foundations of Western illusions about women, purity, simplicity, innocence, were lies. The gentle man, the protector, the adoring husband, would never be enough if underneath the surface a woman's unconscious was craving danger, surrender, and chaos. It was easier for society to silence Freud than to confront the shadow he had uncovered. But this shadow would not disappear. It lingered in the fainting spells, in the inexplicable outbursts, in the way women contradicted themselves without even knowing why. Freud understood that the unconscious did not lie. Words could be polished and polite, but the body told a different story, a story men ignored at their own risk. Have you ever wondered why some of the women who seem most respectable also unravel in the most unpredictable ways? Why they destroy the very peace they say they long for? Freud believed the answer lay here, in the forbidden desires they themselves could not name. And what he saw in those private confessions led him to a conclusion that would disturb men for generations to come. Freud began to recognize a disturbing pattern. What women said they wanted and what their unconscious actually craved were often opposites. A wife might claim she longed for tenderness, yet her symptoms revealed a hunger for upheaval. Another might speak of peace, while her body betrayed a need for conflict. This contradiction was not deception. It was the way desire operated in the shadow, beneath the reach of polite society and rational thought. Freud understood that the unconscious was not bound by morality. It pursued feeling, intensity, polarity, and where there was no resistance, no tension, desire withered. One of Freud's most unsettling insights was what he later described as the eroticization of refusal. To most men, a woman's no is the end of pursuit. To Freud, however, that refusal sometimes functioned as the very spark of her unconscious desire. He noted that arousal often required friction. In other words, surrender was meaningful only when it followed resistance. This didn't mean women wanted harm or coercion. What they wanted was the psychological heat that comes when boundaries are tested and broken through. The unconscious craved the collapse of control, the sensation of being overwhelmed by something greater. A woman often finds satisfaction only where resistance has been offered. Freud wrote, "For him, this was not theory, but an observation drawn from case after case. Seen through this lens, many of the contradictions men face in relationships begin to make sense. A woman says she wants stability, yet feels drawn to the unpredictable man who unsettles her. She asks for honesty, then recoils when it reveals weakness. She claims to want the devoted partner, then obsesses over the man who does not chase her. Men who listen only to words are left confused, wondering what went wrong, but Freud would say nothing went wrong. The unconscious simply did not respond." Modern life gives us new forms of the same drama Freud witnessed in Vienna. Instead of fainting spells and paralysis, repression emerges as emotional games, hot and cold behavior, sudden mood swings, or inexplicable breakups. A woman may sabotage the very relationship she once begged for, not because she wants to destroy it, but because safety without intensity feels lifeless. In countless ways, her unconscious creates friction when none exists, just to feel something real. It is not logical, it is not even fair, but it is human. Have you ever given a woman everything she asked for? Patience, loyalty, consistency, only to watch her lose interest. That sting, that confusion, is exactly what Freud described. To her conscious self, you were perfect, but her unconscious, that ancient engine beneath the surface, was unmoved. And when the unconscious is unmoved, desire dies. It is a truth most men cannot bear to face, because it means their kindness, their efforts, even their sacrifices, may not awaken what lies buried deep within her. Freud saw that repression was the true disease of his time. Society demanded that women appear pure, gentle, and restrained. Yet the more their instincts were denied, the more violently they erupted in hidden ways. Behind the polished manners and corsets, the unconscious was screaming for release. And Freud feared that no matter how much civilization tried to silence it, the shadow always returned. He realized the mask of culture could hide desire, but it could never kill it. And what is buried alive eventually claws its way back to the surface. Freud's exploration went further than hidden desire. He began to see that what society called the civilized woman was not the whole truth, but a carefully constructed mask. Religion, etiquette, and social expectation sculpted an image of purity and composure. Women learned how to blush at compliments, how to soften their voices, how to present innocence. But this performance was not their essence. Underneath the mask was chaos, primal, instinctive, unrefined. And the longer the mask was worn, the deeper the split between the self she showed the world and the self she could not admit even to herself. This fracture gave rise to what Freud controversially called penis envy. He was not speaking of anatomy, but of power. To him, the male body symbolized strength, freedom, and the authority to act in the world without apology. When a girl realized she did not carry this symbolic form, Freud claimed she felt a wound, not only physical, but existential. She lacked not just a body part, but the power it represented. And if this wound was never healed, it transformed into something darker: resentment, rivalry, and a hunger to claim in relationships the authority she felt denied in life. Freud observed that some women, unable to reconcile this absence, did not simply want to love a man, they wanted to dethrone him. They did not only seek closeness, but control. This revealed itself in subtle but devastating ways. Guilt used as a weapon, intimacy withheld to bend a man's will, criticism aimed not at improving, but at emasculating. These were not always conscious choices. They were unconscious strategies to seize the symbolic power she envied but could not embody. As Nietzsche wrote, "Wherever I found a living being, there I found the will to power." Freud saw that same will woven through his patients' confessions. Even in their fantasies of surrender, the contradiction was staggering: to submit in passion while seeking to dominate in life. This paradox explains much of the confusion men face today. A man gives stability, thinking it will be cherished, only to find himself undermined. He offers his devotion, only to be pushed away. It is not that his love is unwanted. It is that once he becomes too easy to possess, too predictable to challenge, he loses the very quality that stirred her desire in the first place. Have you noticed how a woman who once adored you can suddenly turn cold? Not because you failed her, but because you became too easy to conquer. Freud believed this was no accident, but a law of the unconscious. Desire collapses when power is imbalanced. Whether in domination or submission, the mask, then, became the battlefield. Outwardly, a woman may seek the role of the good wife, the admired partner, the virtuous figure, but beneath, the unconscious is restless. She wants to be undone, yet also wants to hold the upper hand. She longs to surrender, yet also to control. And because she cannot speak these contradictions openly, they emerge in indirect ways: drama, sudden rejection, emotional sabotage. Freud realized that repression creates not peace, but instability. The more rigid the mask, the more violent the eruption beneath it. But the most disturbing revelations were not in what women did in society, but in what they admitted in secret fantasies. And Freud discovered that these fantasies were not rare exceptions, but a hidden common language of desire behind closed doors. When masks slipped away, Freud heard fantasies that unsettled even him. Women spoke of dreams where they were not cherished, but seized, not adored, but undone. In daily life, they demanded control, but in fantasy, they longed to lose it. This paradox, control in reality, surrender in imagination, was at the heart of what Freud called psychosexual contradiction. To the conscious mind, it appeared like hypocrisy, but to the unconscious, it was coherence, because only resistance makes surrender meaningful. Without tension, without danger, desire cannot breathe. This truth explains why so many modern men feel invisible despite doing everything right. They listen carefully, provide stability, and never cross boundaries. They believe such devotion will keep love alive. Yet her body does not respond. Her attention drifts, and her passion fades. Why? Because safety without intensity feels empty. She tests, she provokes, she creates storms, not because she hates peace, but because peace without polarity starves her unconscious. As Carl Jung later remarked, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. A reaction requires friction, and without friction, there is no transformation. When men suppress their natural fire, when they apologize for strength, hesitate to lead, or trade truth for approval, they become forgettable. Attraction dies not because they are unkind, but because they are too safe. The unconscious does not hunger for a mirror that reflects comfort. It hungers for a mountain that cannot be moved, a presence that does not flinch. In Freud's time, repression revealed itself as hysteria. Today, it appears as manipulation, passive aggression, or endless emotional tests. The mask may look different, but the unconscious still seeks the same answer. Can you contain me? Can you remain steady while I unravel? Can you break through my defenses without apology? What if her tests were never about breaking you, but about finding out if there is anything within you that cannot be broken? This question is not only about relationships, it is about manhood itself. When you chase endlessly, when you beg, when you adjust yourself into shapes that win her approval, you become replaceable. You cease to be a man with a mission and become a servant of her moods. And nothing kills desire faster. Freud's warning, if you choose to hear it, is that the man who forgets his sovereignty will be consumed by dynamics he does not even see. He will call it love, while slowly bleeding out. The alternative is not cruelty or indifference, but presence. To stand as a man rooted in direction, purpose, and calm. To know that she is not the throne, but the mirror. If she rises to meet your strength, intimacy can ignite at depths most men never experience. If she walks away when you no longer bend, then you have lost nothing, because what left you was not love, but the mask of it. The real prize was never her validation. It was your axis, your clarity, your crown. If these words awakened something long buried in you, hold on to it. Do not let it dissolve into distraction. Share it with the man you know is struggling in silence. Subscribe if you are ready to hear truths most people run from. And above all, remember this: she was never the throne. You are the prize.